Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's Lioness community event. My name is Bobby Carlton. I am the editor in chief and publisher of Lioness Magazine. I'm also the founder of Innovation Women. Today, we have a very cool educational session on retaining and engaging remote employees. And just a reminder, even if you are a solopreneur, this could apply to you someday, or these are all strategies that you could be using with your contractors or interns. So this is helpful to everyone. Before we get started, I want to give everybody a heads up and an opportunity to register for our next networking event. Can I have that next slide, please?
Yes, except it's not working.
It is not working.
Oops,
Awesome. Okay. There we
there we go.
go. Now it's working. Okay, cool. So before we get started with today's presentation, I want to give you all a heads up and an opportunity to register for our next networking event. We're going to be talking about customer-centric success. So, customer-focused strategies to differentiate your business, attract new customers, foster customer loyalty. That is going to be on Tuesday, June 4th at noon Eastern. And I also want to invite you all to join us on Facebook. So the link for both the networking, customer centric success, and the Lioness Entrepreneurship Forum are in the chat for you. And that done, a little bit of housekeeping done. I want to welcome everyone to today's event, especially our speaker today. We have Theresia Intag. She is the president and founder of IntagHire and the founder of Tag for Hire. She has deep expertise in human resources and talent acquisition, and she has a passion for running small businesses with innovative, flexible models that free up your time and optimize your budget and your mental health. Always important to me as well. So she's got over 20 years of recruiting and HR expertise, and she is well versed in the evolution of attracting employees, how to build effective recruiting engines, and how to keep your businesses running with top talent. So I'm going to turn things over to her and let her jump right in and add some value. And again, if you have any questions, drop stuff into the chat or send us the questions in the Q&A. Thanks, folks. Take it away, Theresia.
Thanks, Bobby, so much. I'm just delighted to be here and to meet everyone. I love talking on this topic. I think that the world is changing really quickly, the work world, and employee, motivation is changing and evolving. So this topic is just really special to me on how we create connections, because connecting is becoming almost like a nice to have thing in our society. People are more isolated. So creating connections can be like your little secret sauce for keeping and retaining and attracting new employees or even gig workers or interns. So we're just going to jump right into this topic. Just a little background. You've heard some background about me, but I'm very involved on the human resource side. I've been doing this for 20 years, a heavy emphasis on recruiting as well. So working with people, hiring people, that's my thing. Um, and we talked about, a lot of these topics already when Bobby introduced me, but I like to design businesses that really can grow easier, especially for solopreneurs when you start to expand. It's a tricky game to go from a solopreneur to having, 3 or 4 employees, and there's budget concerns around that. So I like to come up with creative ways to make that happen. And then also I created a second company. My first one was IntagHire that I started 7 years ago, which is all around HR and recruiting services. And then Tag for HR is a membership community for human resource professionals that's creating a supportive environment and community for HR. So that's community is my thing. I really, really appreciate that. So here are some interesting stats that we're seeing today. This is in April 2024 from USA Today. We can see here that, just over 1/3 of workers in the US who can work remotely do so all the time, while 41% are pretty much, in that hybrid model. We're seeing hybrid models with companies really taking effect. But the thing I think that's really important to know as a solopreneur or small business owner is that 42% of office workers would take a 10% pay cut to be in a flexible, remote kind of work environment. That's pretty powerful. And when we think about that, employees have different motivators today than they used to, 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was about the benefit package, and the salary came kind of second. Now it's really about what's the work environment, or what values do the company have? What is it that they're actually doing, and how do they appreciate their employees? All of these things are coming into play a lot more. Like employees have a little bit more power, so to speak, than they used to, because the job market is a little more competitive, and we're seeing different generations kind of have different reactions to work and work-life balance, and those are becoming bigger priorities. So we're seeing this shift that's happening, for the first time, and it's a big shift, and we're right in the middle of it. So it's good to kind of know these pieces and be aware of them as your company grows or moves forward. So one of the first things that I want to distinguish is gig workers versus remote full-time workers. We're going to be talking about both. I really believe my business did not grow without gig workers, and part-time employees. So gig workers typically are somebody who's got a specialty in a certain area and expertise, and they will work part-time or on a project. So what's important about this is, the federal government has a definition of full-time employee versus part-time or gig workers, as well as your state. Every state has a little bit different definition of that as well. So be aware of what those definitions are. But in a general nutshell, if you've got somebody that's working less than 30 hours a week, do not provide them with any, computers or cell phones, then they will be more in that gig worker, part-time worker arena. And nowadays, younger generations love doing gig work. You'll see more and more gig workers on websites like Upworks and Fiverr. And so that's just a great resource to get support for, a 6-month project or something that you're trying new and you don't want to spend a lot of money and you're not sure if you should even have a full-time person. I really strongly recommend think about gig workers. And a lot of those websites, they rate the gig workers on expertise with the projects they've done before, or how well people worked with them. So that really gives you some information, if they're really good or not, too. Then full-time employee, that's more traditional, more what we see regularly. You're providing benefits, you're providing, their equipment. You need them to follow very specific procedures. They're not just bringing a skill set, but they've got to do things exactly in a certain way for your business. And they're working 30 or more hours a week. Those are going to be your full-time workers. So keep that in mind as we talk about different employees. Some of the things that we're talking about really can apply to both gig workers or full-time employees. But I want to make sure everybody understands the difference when I'm going through this. Okay, so first I want to know, like, our audience here. Tell me, fill out the poll if you only have gig workers in your company, if you have a couple, a combo of gig workers or full-time employees, or just full-time employees and you have two or more, or you have some other combination. And other can be a solopreneur where you do it all. You don't work with any experts ever. And that's fine too. Everybody's got a different phase in their business. And depending on your industry, if you're a coach, a lot of times you're just running your business all on your own, and you have a heavier load. So part of why I want to distinguish this, I want to know, kind of what the results are and what might appeal to you guys. But one of the first things I did as a business owner was first I started with interns that helped me out during the summer. And then as the business evolved, eventually I got to a point where I had a part-time executive assistant. And boy, did that really help my ability to expand. That was pretty exciting. Okay, so it looks like that, probably a combination of full-time and gig workers, which I think is really common, 50% there. And then a lot of people actually just work with gig workers. Great. And a few with multiple full-time employees. Okay, great. That is going to take us to our next. We want to really think about with these gig workers and employees, it's not just for full-time employees. We want to think about how do we engage with them and where does that engagement start? And here I have that it's onboarding, but the truth be told, engagement even starts before onboarding. When you have a job posting out there and your website's out there, that is actually a potential employee or gig worker's first engagement with your brand and with your company. The next one, though, is onboarding. It is not when they're actually doing their job. It is the onboarding process can be really powerful on setting that foundation of that they are important and you really want to have a good relationship with that gig worker or with that employee. So there's certain steps to onboarding that I'm going to give you kind of like a little list here of things to do that can really be powerful, have a really positive impact on your organization, and also really help that new employee or that new contractor or part-timer understand what's important to the business, understand, what the values are of the organization, but also help them feel like that they can talk to you. Because I think that's part of it too, is they aren't sure, especially if they're young, they're not sure when they can ask a question or if it's okay to ask a question. Our really young workers, the mid 20-year-olds, they don't even have experience being in an office, so they're not watching other people. They need a little bit more coaching, and we'll get into that later. So here we go. So when you are onboarding, some of the things we really want to look at is first and foremost, of course, is especially with a full-time employee, you've got to be mindful of your paperwork for compliance, filling out your forms that you need for the full-time employee, doing your I-9s and those things. That you want to make sure that you're talking to an HR consultant if you don't have one, so that you know the A, B's, and C's of the basics of what you need to do, and you can have that organized and you can have the paperwork ready before that person even starts. So I recommend 2 weeks before they start, 2 weeks before an engagement, a week, if you can't get it done in the 2 weeks before, but really have those simple pieces just already mapped out. And I recommend too creating an Excel sheet or a Google sheet of these steps that you need to do for onboarding so that you can just check them off whenever you have a new engagement with someone. Because, you're going to have turnover. Sometimes things change and you have to lay people off and then you have to hire again later. So it's nice just to have a checklist to remember. So get those in process. The other thing that I really recommend that I think a lot of companies don't do is send a note a couple of days before they start that you're looking forward to seeing them. So one of the things I want to ask in the chat, and I want to Laura, tell me kind of the answers if you're seeing this. Has anyone been ghosted yet, in the sense of they hired somebody and then that person didn't show up, or they decided they weren't interested in the job a few days before the start date? Has anyone had that experience yet? Put that in the chat, please, because I'm very curious, because some of our clients that we're seeing, they're actually that number's going up, where they're getting ghosted. Laura, does anyone have that issue?
Yes, a couple of us are talking in chat.
Okay.
Bobby and I actually both had that experience, but it looks like Christina, Alina, yep, a lot of people are relating to that.
Okay.
So
yeah. So couple things going on here with ghosting. Some of it tends to be younger people. Part of that is they just take the first offer that they get. They don't realize they might get more offers. And then they get a better offer salary wise. And so they just disappear. They don't know that it's important to communicate, oh, something changed. And then some of it too is just they feel uncomfortable about something, but you don't know what, because you're not touching base. So that's why I really like that welcome letter prior to starting. If they're going to start on a Monday, send it on a Thursday or Friday before. It just lets them know that they're important, you're thinking about them. And sometimes younger people will actually pick an employer that shows they're caring more about them over the salary, if there's only a minor salary difference with other job offers. So I think that that's really a good place to really create that interaction from the get-go. The other thing, this is number 3 here, we want to talk about job descriptions. So when I was recruiting, a job description as a recruiter for me needed to be really simple. I would get these job descriptions from human resources that were really long and complex. And I would be like, I can't post that. No one's going to read through a whole long job description. So over the years, as I got more into HR, I realized why you have different versions of job description. So I would suggest for your job posting, you're going to have a job description that is to the point, talks a little bit about the company and about the job, and really has the requirements. But you can skim it a little bit easier. A person who is looking at a ton of jobs, they can go through it faster and decide if it's something they're interested in. Then you have an internal job description. This is the human resource job description. And this you want to have with their paperwork when you're having them fill out paperwork and what the role is going to be. This has a lot more detail of what is expected of them. So this is helpful in a couple of ways. One, it's helpful to the new potential employee, or if you have a gig worker, you might have a contract with some of these details in it. This is really going to map out for them what the expectations are and what is fundamentally important in this role. And that will allow them to ask questions or come back to you if they're like, hey, I don't see this on the job description. Can we talk about it? It just gives that openness a little bit more, that platform to talk about what the role is and what's expected. Now, here's the really cool thing. So this is what's going to help you as a business owner down the road. So if you have a clear job description, and it can have parts in the job description that says some things need to be flexible because your business might evolve. But that fundamental job description, if you're having an issue with that gig worker or with that employee, then you can go back to the job description and say, hey, this is what the business requires. They require this role to be done this way. So then it's about the business and the role. It's not about the person. It neutralizes that. So if you have an issue down the road, you can actually use that job description to say, hey, we're having some problems because these things aren't getting met that are in the job description. So I always advise that you have, pretty thorough job description when hiring a full-time employee, especially, or have pretty, distinct requirements when signing a contract. Because that allows you to, if there are an issue, you've got a place, an arena that you can talk about it and refer back to that. And that makes it easier too, if you need to let somebody go, as opposed to, it gets drug on sometimes, which really hurts your business if it's lasting 2, 3, 4 months where you keep saying, you're just not doing the right thing. And they keep saying, well, I think I am, so it prevents that back and forth. And so you can get the right person in the right seat, because as a small business owner, I don't have time, or money to be wasting on something that's not working. I've got to have the things in place that work. So clear job description. And if you ever have questions on that, you can reach out to me anytime, and I can give you pointers. The other thing is on number 4. So before they get started, schedule a few key meetings over the first 2 to 3 weeks of their engagement. This is going to help a couple of things. You want them to meet other people in the business if there are other people. And depending on the size, if you have 4 or 5, definitely have them meet the other people in the organization so that they can kind of get a sense of who's working where. Because remember, this person's remote. They're not going to see them randomly unless you're having regular all hand meetings, but you're also not going to, they're not necessarily going to have conversations. They don't just walk up to somebody, so to speak, like you would in a regular job setting, in an office setting. So we want to have these one-on-one meetings that are great opportunities for them to at least get to know somebody. And then they might have more than one place to ask a question sometimes. The other thing I recommend is shadowing. I think shadowing is really powerful, especially the business owner. If anyone that's new can shadow you on some key meetings, some key client engagements, I think that really gives them an opportunity to know your strengths, but also understand what you value as a business owner for your organization, or how you want your organization to be represented. And I'm sure a lot of you are probably doing these, but I just like to send them out there as reminders that I think shadowing is really important those first 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, so then we're going to go to number 5, training sessions. So not only are we training people on what we want them to do on the job, but we also need to remember that we've got different software tools that we're using, different processes that we have in place because something doesn't work here. So you have to go around and do it here to make it work because we're a small business and we're kind of scrappy. Make sure to kind of plot those things out in a document for yourself so that you remember to provide some training on those key tools and software pieces for the new people, because that's going to be really important. If you can make that flow easier for them, and you've got that foundation, they know that they can also give you information about, oh, I'm not really good with these kinds of tools. So, and you can give them a little extra coaching on it or check in with them because everybody has different strengths and weaknesses. So it gives you a little more insight into how they work as well when you're going through these processes and these different tools. And I know for us, we have everything on Google Suite, but then we also have some timekeeping things in QuickBooks. And so they have to go into a couple different arenas. But then we also have a process with our clients that we want them to know. So all of those things are different training scenarios and part of the onboarding process. And we put them on the calendar so that they know what's coming next to get them started on their role. But the other thing is doing these pieces really will help them be really successful in the organization and really get started on the right foot. Young people, and I'm going to refer to them a lot because they're a little different right now of what we're traditionally used to with employees, but they really value when you're showing them the ropes and you're kind of having that coaching mentality, and they feel like they can come to you with questions where I think they would normally be intimidated to have questions. The other thing we like to talk about is weekly goals and Friday check-ins for the first 4 weeks. That way, this is kind of, you're not necessarily talking about the overall job. You're just kind of checking in on how are things really going, and asking those questions of what did you think is working for you? What's not clear for you, where are those stumbling blocks, and having those open conversations. I think that really lets them know that their voice is important. And that's really important to a lot of, Gen Z and millennials. They really want their voice to be important. So that's opening that arena to engage with them a little bit more. The other piece that is not on here, but some companies traditionally in the past would do annual reviews. We're seeing annual reviews start to go to the side, in part because markets are changing so fast. Technology is changing so fast that businesses have to be a lot more agile and pivot quickly than they used to. So now we're seeing companies that do quarterly reviews with their employees or quarterly check-ins with their gig workers to make sure that the goals still align, the individual goals still align with the business goals, because the business has to pivot so frequently that sometimes those individual goals need to also pivot with that. And it keeps everybody on the same page. And some companies are even doing monthly check-ins. I have a lot of part-time workers and what you'd call gig workers. And we actually do quarterly one-on-ones. I see them regularly in other spaces and they come to me with questions, but we do kind of a formal quarterly just so I can see if there's something I'm missing or something going on with them personally that I wasn't aware of. Maybe they've got a sick parent that they're taking care of all of a sudden, or somebody was in the hospital. It just kind of opens that door so I can also understand maybe some of their personal roadblocks that they're having, or if they're having other issues with a client that I didn't know about. So I think those are really, really important. All right. So then we mentioned this a little bit before, but communication is key. Know your audience. And what I mean by this is, what generation is your employee or gig worker? What's their communication style? So I've been hearing a lot of speakers lately talk about this, and I'm sure you guys have heard some bits and pieces on it. But what was fascinating to me was this lady was talking about how baby boomers, they want to talk in person or on a call. They can do email, but they don't necessarily like that. Like, to them, a sign of respect is actually having a one-on-one conversation. Whereas Gen Xer is, they're okay with one-on-one conversations, but they are also okay with emails. And that's where they really like to engage with people, or it's more comfortable for them. Then you get into millennials, and millennials, they're okay with email, but then they also are okay with texting. And like when I was, in my 20s or 30s, we didn't have texting, but when texting was new, no way would you text anybody in business. Like that was for personal use only. That was rude. You're invading their personal space. That's how I thought of it. But now it is the new norm. So texting is actually really normal. And with texting being more normal, the even younger generations, they are, people that are in their 20s are, they talk like they email in a style that you see in texting, because they're texting so much. That is such a normal way of communicating for them that they sometimes don't realize how to do formal emails unless someone's coached them on it. So you might get some really casual emails at times from younger generations when you're engaging with them about a job. That may not always be the reason to write them off, is kind of the point. Understand how they like to communicate. Sometimes the other thing too is in text, there's a whole new world here of what to do in text. Because what I think is normal in text, I have 20-year-old kids. This is where I'm getting a lot of information. What they're telling me is like, oh no, don't do that, because that's not normal. So in a text, I'm going to put a question mark or a period after the end of a sentence. For younger people, that means something entirely different. It's like it's more kind of aggressive. They don't have punctuation at the end. And I was raised, you have to have punctuation on your sentences. So there's just different things to be aware of on how they are engaging or what makes them feel anxious. And I think that's really what's key. If you send them an email that's like, hey, we got to talk, they're going to freak out because they don't know what it is. And they will ruminate over like many different things that it could be, because in part too, I don't think we understand that younger generation going through all of the pandemic things that they went through in high school or early college. There's a lot more anxiety, a lot more fear. So there's a lot more, insecurity around that as well. And until they get to know you, they tend to kind of go to the negative really quick, that something's wrong or they did something wrong. So be reassuring when you can, or be upfront in an email that says, hey, I want to talk about A, B, and C. I'm going to throw something on the calendar. That really helps. And if they're communicating to you via text, let them know, is that okay? Or, coach them. They're open to coaching, but coach them why, hey, I'd really like to see an email if you can send me stuff in email, because for me, I can track messages better in email. So my team will send me emails most of the time. But then I also tell them, hey, if there's something urgent and you need to get a hold of me quickly, feel free to text. I will see it sooner. So I'm okay with that too. So that, like, having that communication as to why you're doing things a certain way is really helpful, because today there isn't a standard set of business, the way we run business, the way we're supposed to be, what's business professional. Those lines are really blurry right now. And young people don't have any exposure to that. Even if they had summer jobs, a lot of times they were remote, or they were just in restaurants or fast food things. So it's not the actual traditional business model. But really that traditional business thing, image of what we had or what I had growing up, that's really shifting. What that office space used to look like, what that engagement used to look like, that's all changing. So we kind of have to be aware of it and really have more open conversations about what's working, what's not working, and look at it from that angle. And why is it working? Why is it not working? So really know the different ages in your organization and kind of what ways might appeal to them more. And if you have older generations working with younger generations, maybe prompt some conversations where it's a group talking of, hey, what do you prefer and why? And what do you prefer and why? And how do we bridge that together? So it's just bringing that understanding to the company of, what is really helpful for them. And then everybody has a voice. And that's really important right now for a lot of workers. They want to feel like they're being heard because they're just really unsure of what's going on. And everybody is kind of like, I don't know how to navigate this right now. So that open communication is key. Know your audience and really have open communication. Okay. So now that we've got people in our organization, we've got them in our business, we, are trying to keep them around because we like them. Things are going well. We don't want them to leave for the next high-paying job. So how do we keep them? What's the retention strategy around this? So, and you're also a small business, so you have limited budgets. So this is where I come in with creative benefits that I think sometimes can go a long way for people, depending on what their needs are. But as right now, I think millennial is the millennial generation is the majority of the workforce, and so what appeals to them is really important. And knowing who your workers are and what's important is a good thing to have in your back pocket. And it's a little bit different even for the Gen Y and Gen Z. So we're going to get into, first I want to ask everybody though, if you could put in the chat, is there anything that you think you offer benefit-wise that is a little different? Maybe it's the flexibility, maybe it's a 4-day work week. Is there anything that you are doing that you've come up with that you think works well? I would love to know if there's some unusual things. So here are some things I wanted to share with you that I've come across with different companies that I think are kind of fun, and they don't necessarily require a big budget for. So we've got one client, they offer a health and wellness day once a quarter, but it's for the entire company. And not all companies can do this because you need somebody, available for the clients, 24/7. But in some companies that are more office, or more traditional business services, you can have everybody off one day. And the reason why they do that is because if the entire company is taking a vacation day, then nobody's emailing, or they shouldn't be emailing. They actually don't want you doing any emails. And it takes the pressure off of everyone about, oh, I'm missing something, or I should be responding to this, or it's really important. I need to jump on this even though I'm on vacation. They want everybody to unplug for one day a quarter. So sometimes they'll even take these days and they'll align them with like the 4th of July, like the day before the 4th of July. So people get 2 days off, with the holiday. I would just think that's a really great way just to give people a break and show that mental health is important to you. So I always like to throw that one out there. A cute one that I heard recently was baby bucks. So you might already have maternity leave, maybe it's just really minimal for what you can afford. But baby bucks is like a pool of money that you set aside. So when somebody does have a baby, they actually can, or adopt someone, they can get $500 or $1,000 for when that happens. So it's a little extra kind of bonus that they get in a way that they get to spend, on their kid, because sometimes there's a lot of costs that go into having a baby that people don't realize. So I love that idea. And it could be any amount that you can afford. You just have it the same for each time, if you've got, multiple employees. But I love that idea. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about, and it's just becoming almost a normal in some companies, especially software companies, is flexible work schedules. I know when I was a working mom, my kids were younger, it was super important to me if I could have a job, and I didn't, but I would have loved to have a job where I could, be able to jump out of work from 3 to 4 to go pick up my kids, bring them home, give them their snacks and let them settle in. And then I can work for 2 more hours. I can make up the time. So sometimes those flexible work schedules are really important to people, or they have, something else going on that they want to spend a couple hours a week on. That's their hobby or their passion project. So they really appreciate the flexible work schedule. This also can be really valuable for gig workers, or part-time workers. There are, just so you know, some very professional, highly skilled people who are really looking to get paid well for the hours that they work, but they don't want to work full time and they don't need benefits. They have benefits from their spouse or something. They have a lot of value to offer. So be on the lookout for them, because they've created an environment where they want the flexible schedule, but they're really good at what they do. So they can add so much value to your organization or your business, but they only need to work 15 hours a week, and they're really impactful in those 15 hours. They know what they're doing and they get it done well. look out for those people because that can really transform your business and help it go into the next level of growth mode. The other thing is you can give away to employees when they start, health trackers like a Fitbit or a Garmin. They're not too expensive, but it's kind of a fun little surprise welcome gift that they get after their first 2 weeks of work. You want to make sure they're going to stick around. But I always think that that's kind of it's always fun to get a little package. And then you get it from your job. Like that's even more fun. And you can open it up and it's something a little unexpected. So I think that's kind of cool. And it's showing that you really value being healthy. The other thing that we're seeing is stipend for home fitness equipment or gym membership reimbursement. But I kind of like the stipend for home fitness because then it can just be like a one-time, hey, we give this to our employees, you get $200 as opposed to an ongoing thing that you're paying. Here's $200, that you can use towards home fitness equipment, such as, little weights or medicine ball or even an app that is, a health app or a workout app that they might use. I think that's a great idea. Then the other thing is charity donation matching. That's a little more traditional that we've seen over the years, but for a lot of younger people, having a company that has a purpose is really important or supports other purposes. So we're seeing a lot of value with charity matching. Maybe, they really believe in, saving, the climate or, the earth or whatever, and if you're, helping them to donate more money to a cause that they really believe in, then that's valuable to them. The other thing is providing lunch and learn. A lot of employees really want to continue building skills. They want to continue to build their knowledge. The rote work every day can kind of feed into the burnout. So it's nice to break it up a little bit with some lunch and learns quarterly, every 6 months, whatever works for your budget. And sometimes you can even bring somebody in for free. And those are pretty impactful to helping employees feel like they're just kind of getting some new information, some things that maybe they wouldn't think about before. The other thing that's kind of fun is pet insurance. We saw an uptick of dog ownership and cat ownership during the pandemic. So a lot of people have pets now that they didn't have before. So I think pet insurance is always a nice little add-on, and it's not very expensive at all that your organization can offer. So hopefully those are helpful things that you can add on a smaller budget to keep that engagement going with the companies, keep connecting with your employees. All right. And so here is some things that we wanted to go through that, how you're staying connected. Those were the kind of some things you can do to connect personally or to show that you care in the organization and what your values are. But this is kind of, where we create some budget-friendly engagement points. And we talked earlier about the monthly touch points. Get to know your employees a little bit better. Talk to them, a little bit more on personal things in those monthly touch points. Company-wide challenges are always fun if you've got more than 2 employees that you can say, hey, we're all going to, start trying to do, what is it, 1,000 steps a day on our walks. And so you start tracking it and you can have a little dashboard where it's being tracked. That's kind of fun. And then you could also host a monthly or quarterly, even, it doesn't even have to be monthly, a quarterly trivia night so that people come for fun to engage with each other. And that's how other employees can get to know some of the people in the other departments that maybe they didn't know very well. I also like breakfast tacos. I'm in Austin, Texas. So if you're not familiar with breakfast tacos, they're really popular here, but you could have something else in your region that's super popular. But where something gets delivered on somebody's birthday. I think that's always a nice way to recognize people, getting something from the company that says, hey, yeah, you have a birthday and we know that and you're important to us. It could even be like, flowers or cupcakes, cookie delivery. Those are always really fun things to throw out there. Peer recognition, I think, is also valuable. When somebody's doing a great job on a project, let them know and make it so that it's important for anyone to recognize anybody's work in the company, because you might hear about something that somebody did who's really self-sufficient, and they're just always doing a great job, but you don't know what they're doing in the details sometimes. So it's nice when other people working with them might bring up, and it's an environment in your company where you're like, hey, please tell me. Let's recognize people. I think that's really good, the peer recognition to promote that. And again, I know a lot of you are smaller companies, but as you grow, these are good things to have. Virtual happy hour or chili night. I like that, where everybody can get together and they can talk about the different kinds of chili that they like to eat. You've got vegetarian chili, chicken chili. They could have bought it at a store or they could make it themselves. But I think a once a year chili night is kind of fun to do as well. Or you could do your happy hour with your favorite drink recipe. Everybody can talk about their favorite drinks that they have, and they could be mocktails and cocktails. You can have a combo these days. Book clubs are always fun to do as well. They could be workbooks or they could just be books for fun, and you rotate the different themes that you're reading about. But that really gets people talking to each other on a different level. And then the other thing I like to throw out there is personality assessments. We're an HR company, so we're always reviewing tools, and we will often have companies ask us, to take a look at their tools because we might promote it. But there's also online some pretty low cost tools, like $100 per person, that you can do to understand strengths. There's strengths finders, and then there's some other tools that are really popular if you Google them, or get on the internet and kind of research a little bit. And they're fun to do because they're not always 100% right, but they're really fun to talk about with each other about, oh yeah, that is my strength, or oh yeah, I do have a hard time. You're getting insight into your employees or even your part-time employees about how they operate better, about things where their sweet spots are, so you know how to give them more things in that sweet spot that they do really well. And you also know what doesn't work for them, because maybe you're frustrated because they're not able to pivot as quickly as you need in the business because they like things to be more consistent. So is that, kind of those personality assessments will give you an awareness as to what arena do they work best in and where can they be the most value in your organization. Okay. So with all of these things, this is part of what kind of reflects your culture and is a part of your culture. So make sure that whatever you choose to do, you do it so that it's helping you build the business that you want, that is an environment that you like, because that's part of your culture. And these things will reinforce that culture that you're building and can add a lot of value when you're talking about your company to potential new employees or gig workers. You can say, hey, this is how we operate, and these are the things that are important to us, and this is how we show that. So I think that's really valuable. So I think with that, we're going to wrap things up. And thank you so much. And I know I gave you a lot of information, so let me know if you have any questions.
And yes, absolutely. If you have a question to ask, your hiring practices, your retention, your company culture questions, drop that into the Q&A. We do already have a little list of questions that people have been dropping in along the way. So we're going to jump into those first. But if you have a question, definitely share. So our first question is, I'm a solopreneur. Where should I start when I want to hire someone full time?
Oh, good question. Good question. Okay. So start first in your network. Go create the job description of what you need for that full-time employee and start talking to your network about, this is what I'm looking for. And you can even say, I think this is what I'm looking for, but I want to get your feedback on if this kind of role worked for you well. You might get some insights to things you didn't know before, but that also helps them start to think for you. Do I know anybody? Do I know anybody that might fit that role well? And then, of course, there's traditional job postings. There's some that are free and there's some that are low cost. Indeed is super common, but be careful when you post a job on Indeed. Set the budget limits, because it can do a per click thing that gets a little out of control on cost. So be mindful of that. But yes, that's where I would recommend getting started.
Okay. Our next question is, Are there warning signs that a potential hire could end up ghosting me? I think you scared everybody in that one.
I know, I know. Sadly, we're not seeing big red flags. It's hard to tell. We're seeing people that were enthusiastic, excited about the job offer, and then they don't show up. So what we're finding though, we're trying to start asking why. Try to get in touch with them to see why did that happen. And we're hearing sometimes it's just they're young people, they don't know about company culture and they just go with the highest offer. They didn't realize they were going to get another offer. They did, and they're embarrassed to come to you to let you know they got an offer. They don't know the etiquette yet. So that's part of it. But so if you've got somebody who you can tell salary super important and it's just not aligning right, that might be just a red flag in the sense of that's what they really need is that number as opposed to the environment's not so important to them. So maybe, kind of get a sense of that when you're doing the interview and you're making the offer to them.
Okay, you mentioned earlier about some job descriptions that you were being handed being too long.
Yes.
So what should a job description include?
Yes. So if you're posting for the job to get to hire someone, you're posting on the internet. You want that job description to have maybe a couple sentences about the company and then a general couple sentences about the overview of the position. And then you want what bullets, like 4 or 5 bullets of what they're going to do in the job. And then you want, 4 to 5 bullets of requirements and a couple bullets of nice to have. I think that's really easy to scan for employees. But again, when you're doing the job offer, you want that to be a detailed job description when you're hiring the person.
Got it. Okay. Our next question, how do I communicate values and goals?
Oh, yes, this is always tricky. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with EOS. EOS has a book out there that you can read. That's their starter book. Bobby, do you remember the name of the first book that they have? It'll come to me in a minute. But in that book, they do talk about, they give you lists of words and things to consider when creating values for your company. So I think that that's really key to doing some work around what are 4 or 5 words that really represent what we value in this company or what you as a solopreneur value in your company, what you want it to look like. I think that's fundamental because that helps you hire people that also understand those values. What was the second part of that? It was values and what else?
It was goals.
Goals. Yes. And then goals for me for a business is where do I want my internal projects to get to each quarter? Again, this is kind of an EOS structure, but so each quarter I'm looking at how do I need to progress? What are the steps to progress to those? And they have to align with my annual goals. And those annual goals can change, during that year process, but you kind of want that fundamental framework of these are our annual goals and how do we break them down for quarterly goals? I hope that's
Okay.
helpful.
Yep. And this next one's giving me a little bit of a giggle because I got to say, breakfast tacos, chili night. How do you say you're from Texas without saying you're from Texas?
Yes, I'm from Texas.
All right. So our next question is what kinds of things can I do for lunch and learns that people would actually be interested in? I never know where to start.
Oh, that's a good question, actually. So maybe start by asking them on your one-on-ones. Ask them like, what is something you would like to learn about? Or what is something you'd like to dive deeper into or hear a speaker on? And that might actually spark some ideas for you. And they're having input into what you're doing. So I think that's valuable.
Okay. And again, folks, just ran through the questions that we had in our Q&A here. If you want to add a Q&A in or just drop it into the chat, definitely go right ahead. Somebody in our audience is saying we do lunch and learns that are not company related things. So hobbies.
Yeah, I think that's actually really fun because a lot of people just do the grind of work and they actually forget about what other things could I possibly be interested in, but it's a really good balance to have hobbies. I think that's a fantastic idea. I like that. I'm going to take that one with me.
Yep, absolutely. We recently did an offsite where we did it at a space that was a maker space,
Oh.
and we all got to do arts and crafts, which for me is a little bit like, oh my God, an art and craft thing. I'm working with a bunch of creative people and a bunch of designers. I'm like, everybody's thing looked much better than mine. Let's just put it that way.
I
All
love
right.
that.
Awesome conversation. Good actionable things for people to take away. Great questions, you folks in the audience. And any last tips you want to send us off into the night with?
Oh, yes. One thing I do want to say is that I'm a big fan of, hiring slowly but firing fast. You've got a business to run, and part of what, again, I'm not trying to sell EOS because that's for when you get to be a certain size, but what I like about what they do is they say put the right butt in the right seat, meaning make sure that the function is being done that needs to be done for the business. It's not about, is the person a nice person or not a nice person? What's the business functions? Try to stay focused on the business function when hiring, to make sure those things get done. And gig workers are great to experiment to see if that's really what you need or don't need.
All right. Sounds fantastic. And we've dropped your link in the chat if
Yes.
anybody wants to reach out to you. I'm gonna give you a little softball. How do you work with clients and customers?
Yes. So we actually work with small to medium sized businesses where we provide a recruiter to do hourly work for them when they need to hire 1 or 100 people. We work anywhere in between. It's really great plug and play. So you don't have to hire a full time recruiter or even a full time HR person. We do the same thing with human resources. Yes. So we're very fractional.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everybody who joined us as well. And hopefully, this is helpful. And I want to get one last chance for folks to sign up for our next meeting. If I can have our team put those links in the chat, that would be awesome. And also, definitely join us on Facebook. So, thank you, everybody. Thank you from Lioness Magazine and also Innovation Women, our parent company. Obviously, you can also find our guest today on Innovation Women. She is an Innovation Women expert and speaker. So, thanks again, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.